Tam fam, please welcome Cheryl Nichols to our show. I read your story in an article, and I said to my team, we have got to get her on. I was so moved by the fact that, Cheryl, you said, first of all, thank you for coming on.
Oh, yeah.
I know this is not
My
easy
pleasure.
for you. You said, if this is happening or happened at my school, this must be happening other places. You feel that this is an epidemic in American schools that we're not talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you can just hear people responding now. When we were very first making this documentary, I knew that it happened, but I didn't know how widespread it was really. I just had a feeling because it was so prevalent where I grew up in Texas.
Yeah, we're both from Texas.
Where are you from?
Oh, this very small town, and look at us digressing
Okay.
now.
Sorry. Anyway, Texans do that. Yeah, I mean, so when we started making this, our team grew, and as our team grew, we had more producers come on, and every time we would tell the story, they would say, yeah, this happened at my school.
You know, I have to tell you, when I read it, I remember there was always a rumor when I was in middle school about this teacher and girls at our school. I never, as a kid now, as an adult, I look back at it, and it sounds so much like what you were telling. And in your story, you say he adored you, he doted on you, and then, as you document, at one point invited you to his home to watch TV. Later that night, with his wife in the next room, he kissed you. Take me, if you can, back to that, where he's like the favorite teacher, everyone likes him, and now you're in his home. Okay, and then he kisses you.
Well, we'd had an email relationship before that was pretty intimate, and it wasn't sexual necessarily. There was innuendo coming from him.
Did you, under your child's mind, realize that this was innuendo?
I think I did, because I think it was exciting for me. There was a part of me that felt like honored and excited, and I was in this kind of secret thing, and I was reading all these books, and I felt like...
I'm happy that you admit to that, because a lot of times you're going, oh, I had no idea. You were being groomed.
Well, it's
right?
important that we don't say, I mean, we have to accept our responsibility in it so that we can put the responsibility on the person who did it. So we have to talk about what it felt like for us, honestly, so that we can actually look at the person who did this and say, this was done to me, I didn't do this.
Right. And that's what you talk about in the experience is the grooming. And for people who don't know, according to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, grooming is a term used to describe the manipulative behaviors that an abuser uses to gain access to a potential victim. So while it's wrong, you see it as attention. You're a young woman. You don't know that it's all manipulation.
Yes, because it's slow, it's invisible, it's happening to you. These little behaviors are just tactics that are used to sort of manipulate you on like a very minute level that is unnoticeable, and it's like a frog boiling in a pot.
When you look back at it, what was the first tactic?
I was interested in film and television and theater, and so he was giving me these books that, like, for a normal teacher it would be fine. For someone who didn't have these intentions with me, it would have been fine. But he started giving me certain books, and he gave me the book Lolita, and I think that was the turning point, where it became more tactical than it was just educational.
Did others notice around you? As I said, at my school, there were all these whispers about this one teacher. Did people...
I didn't realize how many people that were my peers really kind of knew about it or suspected. I didn't realize how many people did, but even just since the documentary has come out, a lot of people have come to me and said, we kind of knew this was happening.
And the first interactions from the internet, communications via email, the book, the grooming continues, the kiss, even with the wife in the home, and it turns intimate. It turns sexual.
Mm. Yeah. This was when I was, 16 and then 17, 18. It was a period of my life that it's already fraught because you're a teenager and you're, hormonal and you've got all of that stuff going on. It's very stressful. So this was a period of time where I was also keeping this secret. And so it was very stressful, and I just remember that time in my life.
That's the thing,
even
with the title,
yeah.
Keeping This Between Us, this kid and now you're holding this secret. How did he convince you to keep quiet once you recognize this is wrong?
Well, he had so much to lose. So I think I was living under the constant threat that if I were to talk about this with anybody, that not only would the relationship be over, but he would be found out and he would lose his career and his wife. And
did he convince you that this was love?
Yeah. I mean, I thought I did. I thought I was, I thought it was some storybook romance that would be written about later, I didn't realize I would be making
Well, no, it's written about, but not in the way that he wants.
Yeah. Well, he said was funny in one of the emails he said to me, he said, just drama is great to keep in your life because you'll have something to write about later. Wow. That's the only time I can really laugh about this.
Well, when we come back, what happened when Cheryl reached out to her teacher for a comment in her new docuseries, and how she's helping parents identify this grooming behavior to protect their own children after the break. I'm back with Cheryl Nichols, who shares her experience of being groomed at just 16 years old by her teacher in the new freeform docuseries, Keep This Between Us. Cheryl, we know that obviously Mary Kay Letourneau, for example, that was a famous case, and I feel like sometimes when I open the paper, I see a different case here and there far too often. You focus in on the imbalance as it relates to male teachers and female students, even though we know it happens the reverse. What is it about that dynamic? Obviously, it's personal for you, but is that we're just seeing more numbers in that direction?
I think a lot of times those are the cases that don't get reported. They're not as sensational. And so I think the numbers, as we've learned making this documentary, are really underreported because there's a phenomenon called passing the trash. That's what we call it, which is where a school will pass one teacher to the next school, kind of like they do in the diocese. And so this happens a lot. The statistic is a teacher is passed 3 times before the teacher is discovered. And so because of that, the numbers with that particular power imbalance are much higher.
Wow.
And that was my experience. That's why we chose to focus on it, because this documentary is a very experiential documentary, and that was the whole point.
You, in the documentary, decide again to reach out to the teacher, offering him the opportunity to explain and to take responsibility. That's a big move.
I felt like it, for sure, when it was happening. It was a decision that I made earlier on in the documentary making process that, I was interested. I wanted to know how this happened, why this happened, and part of that is just kind of trying to get into his head, but I quickly realized that that was just not going to happen. And throughout making this documentary, I realized that it really isn't about him. And we see so many true crime things that are focused on the perpetrators. And I really wanted to focus on the victims, their experience, and I really wanted to show how this happened while I was in the process of coming forward.
It's also a way of taking your power, because it's like, I'm not using my platform to let this guy say whatever he wants. I'm using my platform so that I can help other people.
Well, he already,
Right.
He already got to say his piece. He already got to mold a human and tell his story. And so this is really an opportunity for us, me, Heaven, Allison, Wendy, in some ways, to get to reframe the narrative.
Yeah.
And so that was important to me.
As I said, a lot of people going back to school, what are the behaviors? I'm sure there's no exact template, so I'm always hesitant to say, what are the things that we look for? But there are some things.
Yeah, I mean, look, if somebody is telling you to keep a secret, that's why it's called Keep This Between Us. That's the biggest thing. I think.
But if I'm a parent, I don't know they're telling you to keep the secret.
That's right, and that's why it's really difficult, because you send your kid off to school, your kid's at school 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And so I think the best thing parents can do is really talk to their kids, keep an open dialogue. I think it's hard sometimes with your teenagers to do that, but
right. I don't want to stereotype. My mom was a teacher, and we already know that. We know it's not most, but that doesn't mean that there aren't enough, that this is an epidemic. And we talked about the fun teacher. A lot of times the fun teacher can be too fun.
Fun teacher. Look, fun teacher, coach, anybody who can be, who has enough access to your kid that they can get to know your kid in that sort of way. You know, even if it's, let's say it's like one teacher every few years at every school. That's still a lot.
That's too many.
And I would say like that would be probably how much this happens. It happens a lot. And I think that the way that we can, I think just besides staying in communication with your kid, I think just letting them know that they shouldn't be keeping a secret for an authority figure, an older person.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining. I know we talked about how ever since people started to learn about this documentary, you've just been flooded with emails and folks reaching out to share their story. And that speaks to exactly what you said. It's underreported, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. And you've brought it to light. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me.
Of course. The docu-series is on Freeform. It is Keep This Between Us. It is now available on Hulu. Hulu and Freeform are divisions of Disney, ABC's parent company.